Alright, so we're diving into Elder Scrolls lore today to answer probably the most debated question in the entire fandom. Who's actually the most powerful being in this universe? And look, I've spent the last few days going through the lore, reading discussions, checking the games, and this gets crazy complicated real fast because we're talking about beings that exist outside of reality, gods that dream universes into existence, and mortals who figured out how to hack the system. I've picked 15 of the absolute strongest entities in Elder Scrolls, gone through their entire history and what makes them strong. And at the end, we're going to figure out who takes the number one spot. So let's jump into it. First up, we're looking at Mehrunes Dagon. If you played Oblivion, you know this guy. He's the Daedric Prince of Destruction, and his whole thing is chaos, revolution, change, and basically tearing stuff down. His realm is the Deadlands, which looks exactly like what you'd expect from a destruction god. Fire, lava, ruins, twisted architecture that makes no sense, the works. The sky is blood red, rivers of lava flow everywhere, and Lesser Daedra patrol the landscape looking for souls to torment. During the Oblivion Crisis in the Third Era, Dagon tried something insane. He wanted to merge his realm with Mundus, the mortal plane. This wasn't just an invasion, it was a complete restructuring of reality. He had this cult called the Mythic Dawn, led by Mankar Camoran, who believed that Mundus was actually a plane of oblivion that belonged to Lorkhan and that the 8 divines had stolen it. They thought Dagon was going to liberate them and grant eternal paradise. Mankar wrote the commentaries on the Mysterium Exarchus, which was Dagon's own book of razors. And these commentaries were so persuasive they converted hundreds of people to the cause. The Mythic Dawn assassinated Emperor Uriel Septim VII and hunted down all his legitimate heirs. This broke the covenant with Akatosh that had been maintained through the dragon fires and the Amulet of Kings for thousands of years. With the barriers down, Oblivion gates started opening all across Tamriel. Not just in Cyrodiil, everywhere. Skyrim got hit hard. Black Marsh actually turned the tables and invaded Oblivion back, which is insane. The Argonians were so fierce that Dagon had to close his own gates to stop them from wrecking his realm. When Dagon finally showed up in person at the Imperial City, he manifested as this massive 4-armed demon, red skin, horns, the full terrifying package. He was taller than buildings, his footsteps shook the earth, and Lesser Daedra poured through the gate around him. It took Martin Septim sacrificing himself and turning into an avatar of Akatosh to beat him. Martin shattered the Amulet of Kings and became a giant dragon made of divine fire. The two gods fought in the streets of the Imperial City. When Akatosh won, he drove Dagon back to Oblivion and sealed the barriers permanently, then turned to stone as a monument. But here's the thing about Dagon. This wasn't his first rodeo. He's tried invading Tamriel multiple times and keeps getting stopped. Way back during the Imperial Simulacrum, when Jagar Tarn imprisoned the real Emperor Uriel Septim and ruled in his place, Dagon helped by attacking the Battle Spire. The Battle Spire was this floating fortress in Oblivion where they trained Imperial battle mages. Dagon's forces invaded it, and a single apprentice mage had to fight through his realm and confront him directly. This apprentice figured out Dagon's protonymic and neonymic, which are his true names, and used the broadsword of the Moonreaver, forged from Dagon's own essence, to banish him. One mortal stopped an entire Daedric invasion. Before that, during the First Era, Dagon destroyed the city of Mournhold in Morrowind. He was summoned by a witch who wanted revenge, and even though the Cold Harbor Compact said Daedric princes shouldn't answer summons during wartime, Dagon showed up anyway. He devoured the entire population and leveled the city. Almalexia and Sulfasil, 2 members of the tribunal who were living gods at that point, had to team up to banish him. They succeeded, but Mournhold was completely destroyed and had to be rebuilt from scratch. Dagon also destroyed Alt Sota, the ancient home of House Sota. He's attacked Tamriel more times than we can count. There was this sorcerer named Khmer Greigen who made a pact with Dagon and then defeated him by twisting the terms of the agreement. Dagon cursed him for it, but still lost. After the Oblivion Crisis ended, things got really bad for Dagon. The other Daedric princes were pissed at him. The Cold Harbor Compact had been an agreement among 8 Daedric princes that they wouldn't interfere with Tamriel during certain circumstances. By breaking through with a full-scale Oblivion Crisis, Dagon violated everything. The other princes disowned him. His influence on Nirn weakened drastically. The Mythic Dawn cult was hunted down and eradicated. People who tried to rebuild it in the 4th era failed miserably. By the time Skyrim happens, 200 years later, Dagon can barely manifest near his own altars. His shrine in Skyrim is in this remote mountain location, and when you complete his quest, all he can do is repair Mehrunes' razor. He can't even appear properly. He summons a couple Dremora to attack you as a final test, but that's it. This is a god who once walked through the Imperial City as a towering demon, and now he's reduced to parlor tricks. There's also this weird theory that Dagon wasn't always the Prince of Destruction. According to Munkar Camoran's writings, which might be complete nonsense, Dagon was originally created by the Magna Ge in a parallel world called Lig. He was supposed to be the Prince of Hope who would free mortals from the tyranny of the Druch and Molag Bal, but somewhere along the line, he became so focused on destruction that he forgot his original purpose. Whether any of that's true is debatable, but it adds an interesting layer to his character. So yeah, Dagon can terrorize the continent, but he needs very specific circumstances to even show up on Nirn properly, and when he does, mortals keep beating him. A single Battlespire apprentice banished him. The hero of Kuwatch closed his gates all across Cyrodiil. Martin Septim transformed into a god just to kick him out. The guy's powerful, absolutely, but he's also kind of a chronic loser when it comes to actually conquering things. That's why he's at the bottom of this list. Next, we're talking about Molag Bal, the Daedric Prince of Domination. This is probably the most evil Daedric prince in the entire pantheon, and that's saying a lot when you're competing with beings who represent plague, madness, and nightmares. His sphere covers domination, enslavement, corruption, and he created vampirism by violating a priestess of Arkay named Lamai Bealfag. Yeah, his title is literally the King of Rape. His methods are brutal, sadistic, and designed to break people's will completely. His realm, Cold Harbor, is described as a twisted mockery of Nirn. Imagine the mortal world, but wrong. Buildings are warped and broken. The sky is this sickly red color with holes torn in it, and everything is designed to cause maximum suffering. Souls trapped there are called soul-shriven, and they lose their bodies and minds over time, becoming these shambling husks that barely remember being human. Cold Harbor isn't just a place of torment. It's literally built from the suffering of the souls trapped there. The architecture shifts and changes based on Molag Bal's whims. During Elder Scrolls Online, set in the Second Era, Molag Bal attempted the plane meld. This was his magnum opus, his big plan to take over everything. The scale of this event was insane. He wasn't just trying to invade Tamriel, he was trying to physically drag the entire mortal plane into his realm. The boundaries between Mundus and Oblivion would dissolve, and Nirn would become part of Cold Harbor forever. Every soul on the planet would belong to him. The setup for this took years. Molag Bal manipulated a group called the Five Companions. There was Vernacquilarius, who wanted to become Dragonborn and legitimize his claim as emperor. Manimarco, the king of worms and most powerful necromancer in history. Lyris Titanborn, a half-giant warrior. Sai-Sahan, a Redguard blade master. And Abnur Tarn, a battle mage and the power behind the imperial throne. They were searching for the Amulet of Kings so Varen could perform a ritual to become Dragonborn. Except Manimarco was secretly working for Molag Bal the entire time. During the ritual, Manimarco sabotaged it, causing something called the Soul Burst. This event ripped a hole between Nirn and Oblivion. Magical aftershocks swept across the entire world. Mages died or went insane. Red Mountain trembled in Morrowind, earthquakes devastated Skyrim, hurricanes battered the coasts of Elsewhere and Valenwood. The constellation of the Serpent grew huge in the sky, threatening every other constellation. Reality itself became unmoored from the multiverse. With the barriers weakened, Molag Bal started dropping dark anchors all across Tamriel. These were massive interdimensional machines that would crash down from the sky, hook into the ground, and start pulling pieces of Nirn into Cold Harbor. Daedra would pour through them. The anchors would corrupt the land around them. You could see them from miles away, these huge chains stretching up into oblivion, glowing with dark energy. The player character in ESO, called the Vestige, had their souls stolen by Manimarco and sacrificed to Molag Bal. This made them soulless, which sounds bad, but actually gave them a unique advantage. Without a soul, they couldn't truly die. They'd just reform. This made them the perfect weapon against Molag Bal, because they could venture into Cold Harbor and challenge him directly without risking permanent death. The campaign to stop the Planameld required uniting all three Alliance factions. The Ebonheart Pact, Daggerfall Covenant, and Aldmeri Dominion were at war with each other, fighting over the Imperial City and control of Cyrodiil. Vanus Galerion, founder of the Mages Guild, and Countess Hakruba of the Fighters Guild convinced the Alliance leaders to meet on the neutral island of Sturk. The negotiations immediately broke down because everyone hated each other. Then Molag Bal himself appeared and opened portals, sending Daedra to attack. This convinced the leaders that they needed to work together or everyone would lose. The invasion of Cold Harbor was this massive cooperative effort. The Fighters Guild and Mages Guild sent their best warriors and mages. The Vestige led strike teams into Cold Harbor to rescue key figures and destroy Molag Bal's infrastructure. They found a city called the Hollow City, which had been protected by Meridia, another Daedric prince who hated Molag Bal. This became their base of operations in enemy territory. They rescued King Laloriaran Diner, an ancient Eyelid king who'd been imprisoned in Cold Harbor for centuries. Molag Bal kept him alive just to torture him because of their ancient conflict. They destroyed the Black Forge where dark anchors were manufactured. They smashed the great shackle that was powering the Planimeld. But even after all that, it was too late. A planar vortex had formed, and it was actively merging the two planes of existence. The final confrontation happened at the planar vortex itself. The Vestige and the five companions, minus the traitorous Manimarco, entered this space between realms. Meridia revealed herself and helped distract Molag Bal while the Vestige destroyed the anchors holding the vortex together. Molag Bal threw everything at them. Meteors rained down, hordes of Dremora attacked. He tried to crush them with raw power. But here's the key thing. It took another Daedric prince to stop him. Meridia's intervention was crucial. Without her, the mission would have failed. This tells us that Molag Bal, while incredibly powerful, isn't invincible even among his own kind. There's a hierarchy, and beings like Meridia can challenge him directly. After the planar vortex collapsed, the five companions had one more task. They traveled to Heart's Grief, Molag Bal's personal palace, to confront him with the Amulet of Kings. One of them, either Varen, Lyris, or Saisahan, had to sacrifice themselves to power the amulet properly. The Vestige ended up using it to weaken Molag Bal enough to drive him back and end the threat permanently. Well, not permanently, because Daedric princes can't truly die, but enough to stop the Planameld and restore the barriers between worlds. The thing is, even after being defeated, Molag Bal didn't die. Daedric princes are immortal. They can be banished, weakened, humiliated, but they always come back. After the main quest, Molag Bal just retreated to his palace to recover. He tried one more time to restart the Planameld by sending a Shifkin named Molag Kena to infiltrate the White Gold Tower and use an Elder Scroll to initiate something called the Planameld Obverse. This would have merged Cold Harbor into Nirn instead of the other way around. But the Vestige and a group of adventurers stopped that too. Molag Bal created vampirism, and that's a power that persists even when he's weakened. Every vampire in Tamriel is tied to him spiritually. When someone becomes a vampire, part of their soul belongs to Molag Bal. When they die, they go to Cold Harbor. This gives him an endless supply of servants and an anchor to the mortal world that can never be completely severed. The vampire bloodlines, purebloods like Harkon in Skyrim, have immense power derived directly from Molag Bal. His artifacts are nasty pieces of work. The mace of Molag Bal drains stamina and magicka from victims and transfers it to the wielder. In some versions, it traps souls inside, feeding them directly to Molag Bal. The mace is cursed, and anyone who wields it feels Molag Bal's presence in their mind, whispering to them, trying to corrupt them. But here's where Molag Bal falls short compared to higher beings on this list. His power works through manipulation, corruption, and slow domination. He's patient. He'll spend centuries breaking one person if that's what it takes. The Planameld required decades of preparation, agents working in secret, complex rituals, and machinery. He doesn't have the raw reality warping power to just snap his fingers and take over. He needs infrastructure, servants, and time. He's more like a cosmic mob boss than an all-powerful god. He's also been beaten by mortals multiple times. The Nerevarine in Morrowind could cure vampirism by completing a quest that involved killing Molag Bal's daughter, which forced him to lift the curse. The Vestige defeated him at the height of his power. He plays the long game because he has to, because he can't just overwhelm opposition with brute force the way some beings can. Still, the fact that he nearly succeeded in merging two entire planes of existence puts him way above most threats in Elder Scrolls. The Planameld was one of the closest calls Tamriel has ever faced. If not for Meridia's intervention and the heroics of the Vestige, Molag Bal would have won. That earns him a spot on this list, but he's not at the top. Next, we're looking at Hermaeus Mora, and this is where things start getting properly weird. He's the Daedric Prince of Knowledge, Memory, and Fate, but calling him a Daedric Prince almost feels wrong because he's so much older and stranger than most of them. He appears as this writhing mass of tentacles, eyes, and mouths, straight out of Lovecraft. His voice sounds like multiple people speaking at once, layered on top of each other, and listening to him for too long makes your head hurt. His realm, Apocrypha, is an infinite library that contains all forbidden knowledge that has ever existed or will ever exist. When you enter Apocrypha, you find yourself in this endless maze of books, corridors lined with shelves that stretch into darkness, pools of inky black water that you can swim through, and these platforms floating in a void. The sky, if you can call it that, is this sickly green color. Tentacles emerge from the ground and ceiling constantly. There are seekers and lurkers, creatures made of pure knowledge and ink, patrolling the hallways and attacking anyone who doesn't belong. The books in Apocrypha contain everything. Every secret, every piece of forbidden lore, every truth that was never meant to be known. Reading them can drive you insane. There are accounts of mages who entered Apocrypha seeking knowledge and never left, either because they got lost in the infinite corridors or because they became so obsessed with learning that they forgot about everything else. Morian Zenas, a famous mage from the Mages Guild, traveled through Oblivion Plains to document them. When he reached Apocrypha, he sent fewer and fewer messages back until finally nothing. He just vanished into the stacks, consumed by his need to know more. Hermaeus Mora is called an Urdaedra, which means he's elder than Ada. The Ada are the original spirits, the Ada who existed before creation. That makes Mora ancient, beyond comprehension. He's one of 8 Daedric princes who signed the Cold Harbor Compact. According to some sources, he was born from thrown-away ideas during the creation of mortality itself. When the Aedra were creating Mundus and deciding what mortality would look like, the concepts they discarded supposedly became Hermaeus Mora. That's why he knows everything, because he's literally made of all the rejected knowledge from creation. His black books are artifacts that appear in the mortal world from time to time. They're tomes bound in some kind of unknown material that might be skin or leather or something worse. Opening one sends your consciousness to Apocrypha. Inside, you learn things whether you want to or not. The knowledge changes you. people who read black books come back different. They gain powers, but they also lose parts of themselves. Their memories become fragmented. They start speaking in strange ways. Some of them serve Hermaeus Mora without even realizing it. In the Dragonborn DLC for Skyrim, we learn about Miraak, the first Dragonborn. Thousands of years ago, during the Dragon War, Miraak was one of the ancient dragon priests who turned against the dragons. He was the first mortal to learn the tomb from Paarthurnax and use it to kill dragons. But instead of helping humanity fight for freedom, Miraak found a black book and became a servant of Hermaeus Mora. Mora promised Miraak power beyond imagination. In exchange, Miraak served him in Apocrypha, gathering knowledge and souls. When Miraak tried to return to Tamriel during the events of Skyrim, when he felt another Dragonborn had appeared, Mora allowed it at first. He let Miraak try to subjugate the people of Solstheim and gather their power. But when it became clear that Miraak was planning to betray him and escape Apocrypha permanently, Mora just impaled him with a tentacle and absorbed all his knowledge like it was nothing. That's the terrifying thing about Hermaeus Mora. He doesn't need to fight. He knows your plans before you make them. He sees every possible future, every outcome, every decision you might make. When the last Dragonborn enters Apocrypha to confront Miraak, Mora is orchestrating the entire thing. He is using the Dragonborn as a replacement for Miraak. The whole conflict is Mora solving a problem, upgrading to a better servant who's more powerful and less rebellious. Mora claims to know the secrets of the Skal, an ancient Nord tribe on Solstheim. Their secrets had been hidden from him for generations through a magic barrier. He spends resources trying to break that barrier just because he can't stand not knowing something. When he finally learns the Skal secrets, which turn out to be pretty mundane nature worship stuff, he's satisfied. It wasn't even useful knowledge, he just needed to possess it. There are theories that Hermaeus Mora knows every word of every Elder Scroll. The Elder Scrolls themselves are fragments of creation, pieces of the universe that contain past, present, and future simultaneously. Reading them can blind you or drive you mad, because mortal minds aren't meant to process that kind of information. Mora might be the only being who can read them without consequences. But here's the limit to Hermaeus Mora's power. It's all indirect. He knows everything, sees everything, can predict your every move, and knows your weaknesses, but he needs champions and agents to actually do things in the mortal world. He can't just reshape reality on a whim. He can't physically manifest on Nirn the way some Daedric princes can. His power is information, manipulation, foresight. Knowledge is power, absolutely, but it's not the same as being able to literally rewrite the laws of physics. He also seems bound by contracts and deals. When he makes a bargain, he keeps it, at least technically. He'll twist the words and find loopholes, but there's some kind of rule system he operates under. That suggests limits to his power. If he was truly all-powerful, he wouldn't need to honor agreements. He could just take what he wants. Still, never underestimate Hermaeus Mora. His patience is infinite. His knowledge encompasses everything that's ever been known or could be known. He's playing a game that mortals can't even comprehend, moving pieces that won't matter for centuries or millennia. The scary part isn't what Mora does now, it's what he might be setting up for the future. Let's talk about Alduin next, the World Eater, the firstborn of Akatosh. This is a dragon, but not just any dragon. Alduin was created to literally end the world. His purpose, his entire reason for existing, is to devour the current Kalpa, the current cycle of time, so a new one can begin. He's basically the reset button for reality. In Nordic mythology, Alduin is the harbinger of the apocalypse. When he returns, he's prophesied to consume everything, not just Tamriel, not just Nirn, everything. The Kalpa itself ends when Alduin does his job properly. Then time resets, and a new Kalpa begins with a new set of gods, mortals, and rules. It's happened before and will happen again. During the Meretic era, before recorded history, Alduin ruled over mortals as a god king. The dragon cult dominated humanity, especially in Skyrim. Dragon priests, humans who served the dragons, had absolute authority. They could sacrifice anyone they wanted to please their dragon overlords. The common people lived in terror, and death was a constant threat. Alduin was the head of this power structure. He wasn't interested in protecting humanity or maintaining order like Paarthurnax later claimed dragons should. He wanted worship, domination, tribute. Other dragons like Paarthurnax, Odahviing, and countless others served under him, maintaining his empire through fear. Eventually, the ancient Nords rebelled. This started the Dragon War. Paarthurnax, who was Alduin's lieutenant and brother, betrayed him and taught mortals how to use the Thu'um. The voice was supposed to be the exclusive power of dragons, a way to literally speak reality into different shapes. But Paarthurnax, acting on behalf of Kyne, taught the ancient Nords how to shout. This gave them a fighting chance. Except they still couldn't kill Alduin. They tried. The greatest warriors and tongue speakers of that era fought him at the throat of the world. They hit him with everything they had. Nothing worked. Alduin would just heal, regenerate, and keep coming. He was immortal in a way that even normal dragons weren't. Killing him was literally impossible because he's a necessary part of the cosmic cycle. So, they used an Elder Scroll. 3 ancient Nords, Feldir the Old, Hakon One-Eye, and Gormlaith Golden Hilt, performed the ritual that threw Alduin forward in time. They didn't defeat him, they just postponed the problem by thousands of years. The shout they used was so powerful that reading about it from an Elder Scroll can damage your sight permanently. That's how desperate they were. Alduin ended up in the 4th era, right at the start of Skyrim. He appeared during the execution of the player character in Helgen, interrupting it by burning the entire town. His return wasn't supposed to happen yet. The Kalpa wasn't ready to end. Something about the way he was thrown through time messed with his purpose. Instead of immediately devouring the world like he should have, he decided to re-establish his dominion over mortals first. He flew around Skyrim, raising other dragons from their burial mounds. Every dragon who died during the Dragon War had been buried, but their souls remained intact. Alduin would land at these mounds, speak a phrase in the dragon language, and the dragon would be resurrected. Zi los Diidu, which means, "Your soul is mine to command." The dragon would burst from the ground, fully restored, and swear loyalty to Alduin again. This is what makes Alduin so dangerous. He can resurrect dragons just by speaking. He's rebuilding his army, preparing to subjugate Tamriel before ending it, but this is also his weakness during Skyrim. He's not acting as the world leader. He's acting as a tyrant king that makes him vulnerable. The Greybeards, masters of the Tome who've spent decades or centuries learning to speak with the voice, are terrified of Alduin. They can cause avalanches with a whisper. They can shout with such power that the mountain shakes. But Alduin is on another level entirely. When the Dragonborn goes to the throat of the world to learn Dragonrend, the ancient shout that can make dragons vulnerable, the Greybeards can't help with that because it's too dangerous. Dragonrend is a shout created by mortals during the Dragon War, and it's the only thing that can really hurt Alduin. It forces a dragon to understand mortality, to feel the weight of finite existence, and that temporarily grounds them and makes them vulnerable. Dragons are immortal unless killed, so the concept of mortality is alien and painful to them. Dragonrend weaponizes that. The Dragonborn fights Alduin on the throat of the world and wins, barely. But Alduin isn't truly defeated. He flees to Sovngarde, the Nordic afterlife, where he's been devouring the souls of dead Nord heroes to regain strength. In Sovngarde, he's trying to consume enough power to recover from his wounds and resume his rampage. The final battle happens in Sovngarde, in the Hall of Valor, with the ancient heroes Gormlaith, Feldir, and Hakon helping. They use clear skies to dispel the mist that Alduin hides in, then they all gang up on him. Even with Dragonrend and 3 legendary warriors helping, it's a brutal fight. When Alduin finally dies, his body disintegrates. and his soul doesn't get absorbed by the Dragonborn like every other dragon. That's weird. That suggests he's not truly dead, or that his death works differently because of what he is. Paarthurnax afterwards says that Alduin will return someday. It's inevitable because he is part of the cycle of time. The World Eater must eventually do his job. The Kalpa has to end and reset. But because he was defeated before fulfilling his purpose, everything is uncertain. Maybe he'll come back stronger. Maybe he'll come back different. Nobody knows. Here's the thing about Alduin that keeps him from being higher on this list. He's not acting at full power during Skyrim. He's distracted, weakened, confused about his purpose. If Alduin was actually functioning as the World Eater proper, if he was consuming the Kalpa like he's supposed to, he'd be unstoppable. The Dragonborn couldn't defeat him. Nobody could. The end of the Kalpa is inevitable. But because he chose to be a tyrant instead of fulfilling his cosmic role, he became beatable. A mortal with the soul of a dragon managed to kill him, at least temporarily. That's a massive showing of weakness compared to what he could be. The version of Alduin we fight is like 5% of his true potential. If he ever comes back and actually does his job properly, he'll devour everything, and there's nothing anyone can do about it. So Alduin belongs on this list for what he represents, his cosmic role as the end of all things. But the version we see in Skyrim isn't operating at that level. That's why he's in the middle rather than at the top. Now we're talking about Jyggalag, and this is where the power levels start getting really interesting. Jyggalag was once the most powerful Daedric prince. Not one of the powerful ones, the most powerful. His sphere was order, logic, deduction, and absolute certainty. He had a library that contained predictions of every single event that would ever happen on Mundus or Oblivion before they occurred. He knew everything, past, present, future. He was calculating, methodical, logical to a fault, and his power was growing exponentially. Think about what that means. Jyggalag could predict every decision every person would make, every battle, every birth, every death, every choice, all laid out in perfect order. His realm was pristine, geometric, crystalline. Everything had its place. There was no chaos, no randomness, no free will, just order. His followers, the Knights of Order, were perfectly obedient soldiers who executed his commands without question. They were basically robots made of crystal and magic. The other Daedric princes watched Jyggalag grow stronger and stronger, and they got terrified. This wasn't normal rivalry or competition. This was existential dread. If Jyggalag continued on his path, he would eventually impose perfect order on all of Oblivion. That would mean the end of change, the end of chaos, the end of everything that makes the Daedric princes what they are. Mehrunes Dagon, whose whole existence is change, would cease to exist. Sheogorath, whose madness is the antithesis of order, would be erased. All of them would become irrelevant. So they did something unprecedented. Every single Daedric prince, all of them, worked together to curse Jyggalag. Think about that. These are beings who normally hate each other, compete constantly, have rivalries that span millennia, but they all agreed that Jyggalag was too dangerous. They pooled their power and turned him into his complete opposite. They made him Sheogorath, the mad god, the prince of madness and chaos. The irony is beautiful in a twisted way. The most ordered being became the most chaotic. The ultimate logician became utterly insane. Everything Jyggalag stood for was inverted. His crystalline realm became the Shivering Isles, split between mania and dementia. His perfect order turned into glorious chaos. His Knights of Order became dark seducers and golden saints. His library of predictions became random gibberish and prophetic madness. But the curse wasn't permanent. At the end of every era, during an event called the Grey March, Jyggalag would return to his original form. He'd invade his own realm, the Shivering Isles, with the Knights of Order. He'd systematically conquer every inch of it, destroying Sheogorath's creations, imposing order on chaos. The Knights would march in perfect formation, unstoppable, converting everything to crystal. The golden saints and dark seducers would fall. The mazed cities would crumble. And at the end, when everything was perfectly ordered again, Jigalaug would transform back into Sheogorath. Then Sheogorath would wake up, look at his destroyed realm, and rebuild it all over again. Mania and dementia would rise from the ashes. New followers would arrive. The madness would return. And the cycle would repeat at the end of the next era, forever. An eternal punishment where Jigalaug is forced to destroy everything he creates as Sheogorath, then watch helplessly as Sheogorath rebuilds it into chaos again. During the Shivering Isles expansion in Oblivion, the hero of Kuwatch wandered into the Shivering Isles and caught Sheogorath's attention. Sheogorath, in a moment of lucidity, or perhaps planning, or maybe just madness, decided to break the cycle. He had the hero of Kuwatch perform a series of tasks that would allow them to become Sheogorath themselves. It's a process called mantling, where you walk like someone until you become them. The hero had to stop the Grey March by taking on the role of Sheogorath completely. They rebuilt the Gatekeeper, fought off the Knights of Order, dealt with conspiracies in the court, and eventually confronted Jigalaug directly. When the transformation was complete, the original Sheogorath became Jigalaug permanently, and the hero became the new Mad God. Jigalaug was finally free. After eons of being cursed, forced to destroy his own creations over and over, he could return to his nature. He thanked the hero of Kuwatch, which is bizarre coming from a being of pure order, and left to parts unknown. He hasn't appeared since. No games after Oblivion mention him. He's out there somewhere, possibly rebuilding his power, possibly plotting revenge, possibly just existing in perfect order. The power Jigalaug represents is terrifying because it's not just strength, it's inevitability. When the Knights of Order march, they don't stop, they don't tire, they don't question. They just conquer, methodically, perfectly. During the Grey March, Sheogorath's forces would try everything to stop them and fail every single time. That's what scared the other princes. Not that Jigalaug was strong, but that he was unstoppable. His library contained perfect predictions. That means he knew what you'd do before you did it. He knew how every battle would end before it started. Fighting Jigalaug wasn't about strength or strategy. It was about fighting fate itself. How do you defeat someone who knows every move you'll make? The fact that every Daedric prince had to work together to stop him says everything. These are beings of immense cosmic power. Mehrunes Dagon tried to conquer Tamriel, Molag Bal nearly merged Nirn with Cold Harbor. But none of them scared each other enough to form an alliance, except Jigalaug. He was the one threat that made them all cooperate. Pre-curse Jigalaug would be way higher on this list, probably in the top 5. Post-curse, freed Jigalaug is an unknown quantity. He's been gone for 200 years by the time Skyrim happens. Is he regaining his strength? Is he plotting? Did the curse permanently weaken him? Nobody knows. That uncertainty, combined with his historical power, earns him this spot on the list. Next up, we're talking about Numidium, because this thing is a different kind of terrifying. Numidium, also called the Brass God, or the Brass Tower, or Walk Brass, was a colossal brass golem created by the Dwemer. This thing was supposedly 1,000 feet tall, though descriptions vary. Some say it was even bigger. When it walked, the ground shook for miles. When it moved its arms, buildings crumbled. This wasn't just a weapon, it was a god built by mortals. The Dwemer were obsessed with understanding the universe. They rejected the gods, both Aedra and Daedra. They thought worship was slavery. They wanted to become gods themselves through science, engineering, and understanding rather than prayer and faith. Their tonal architects, led by Kagrenac, discovered ways to manipulate reality through sound. They created the tools of Kagrenac, Keening, Sunder, and Wraithguard. These tools could tap into divine power sources. At the Battle of Red Mountain, the Dwemer were fighting the Chimer and the Nords. The Chimer had allied with the Nords to stop whatever the Dwemer were doing with the Heart of Lorkhan, the physical heart of a dead god buried under the mountain. Kagranak decided this was the time to activate Numidium. He connected it to the heart using his tools, performing a ritual meant to achieve apotheosis for the entire Dwemer race. Something went catastrophically wrong. When Kagranak struck the heart with his tools, every single Dwemer across all of Nirn vanished from existence in an instant. Not just in Morrowind, everywhere. Hammerfell, High Rock, Skyrim, all of them. Thousands of Dwemer just disappeared. Their clothes fell empty to the ground. Their bodies were gone. No death, no screams, just nothing. The only survivor was Yagrum Bagarn, who'd been in a plane of oblivion when it happened and came back to find his entire race gone. Theories about what happened vary wildly. Maybe they succeeded in their goal and merged their consciousness into Numidium itself, becoming the skin of the brass god. Maybe they got erased from existence by a backlash of divine power. Maybe they're trapped in a dimension outside time. Maybe they became part of the Numidium's power source. Nobody knows for sure. Numidium sat dormant under Red Mountain for centuries. The Tribunal, Vivec, Almalexia, and Sotasil used the heart of Lorkhan to maintain their godhood but left Numidium alone because it was too dangerous to mess with. Then, during the Second Era, Tiber Septim got his hands on it. The story of how Tiber Septim acquired Numidium is complicated. He made a deal with the Tribunal. He'd leave Morrowind alone and let them keep their independence if they gave him Numidium. They agreed, thinking it was useless without the Heart of Lorkhan, but Tiber had his court mage, Zurine Arctus, create something called the Mantella. This was a soul gem of immense power that could replace the heart as Numidium's power source. Zurine himself ended up trapped inside it, his soul providing the energy. With Numidium operational, Tiber Septim used it to conquer the rest of Tamriel. The Aldmeri Dominion had been resisting imperial expansion for years. They had powerful mages, strong armies, and naval superiority. Tiber marched Numidium into their territory, and it was a massacre. The brass god would stomp on cities, and they just ceased to exist. Not destroyed, not burned, ceased. Reality itself rejected them. Numidium's power wasn't just physical destruction, it was ontological denial. It said no to things, and they stopped existing. After conquering Tamriel, Numidium was deactivated and hidden. Then came the events of Daggerfall. Multiple factions were searching for the Totem of Tiber Septim, an artifact that could control Numidium. 7 different groups found pieces of the puzzle. The Empire, Daggerfall, Sentinel, Wayrest, Orsinium, the Underking, and the King of Worms. The agent of the Emperor had to decide who to give the totem to. Here's where things get insane. Due to a malfunction with time itself, all 7 factions activated Numidium simultaneously, not one after the other, not different versions. The same Numidium was activated by 7 different people at the same moment, creating 7 contradictory timelines that all happened at once. This caused a dragon break called the Warp in the West. Dragon breaks are when linear time shatters. Multiple contradictory events occur simultaneously, and when time stabilizes, all of them are somehow true even though they contradict each other. The Warp in the West lasted 2 days. During those 2 days, 44 independent cities and regions in High Rock and Hammerfell were conquered, destroyed, or merged into 4 larger kingdoms. Orsinium was legitimized as an independent nation. The Underking was destroyed. The Empire secured control of the region. All of these events happened at the same time and are all canonically true. Numidium caused this by existing in multiple places, doing multiple things. Reality couldn't handle it. Time broke. When the dust settled, Numidium was gone, possibly destroyed or possibly returned to storage. The Mantella was depleted and fell from the sky, shattering. The power Numidium represents is unlike anything else on this list so far. It doesn't kill enemies. It erases them. It denies their existence. When it walks, it imposes what's called anuic stasis, the concept of unchanging order on everything around it. That's the opposite of reality, which is supposed to be dynamic and changing. Numidium says no to the fundamental nature of existence, and reality breaks trying to accommodate that paradox. Some texts describe Numidium as anti-creation. The Aedra created Mundus by sacrificing their divine power to make a place where change and mortality could exist. Numidium is the rejection of that creation. It's a brass middle finger to the gods themselves. The Dwemer built a machine that could undo creation, and they successfully activated it at least twice. But here's the limit. Numidium is a tool, not an independent being. It needs someone to activate it and a power source, either the Heart of Lorkhan or the Mantella. Without those, it's just an inert statue. It has no will of its own, no consciousness, no goals. Whoever controls it directs its power. That makes it incredibly dangerous, but not truly alive. If Numidium was sentient, if it could choose its own actions, it would be way higher on this list. A thinking, god-killing machine that rejects reality itself would be unstoppable. As it stands, it's one of the most destructive forces in Elder Scrolls history, but it's still just a weapon. Now we're looking at Vivec, and this is where we start getting into beings who've transcended normal godhood. Vivec was one of the Tribunal, along with Almalexia and Sodasil. They were originally Chimer, the ancestors of the Dunmer, but they used Kagrenac's tools on the Heart of Lorkhan to achieve divinity. More than that, Vivec achieved something called Kim, a state of enlightenment that lets you reshape reality through will alone. Vivec's story starts during the First Era. He was born as an ordinary Chimer, though some of his later writings claim he was always divine, born from different parents in different versions of history. The truth is unclear, because Vivec himself rewrote parts of his past using Kim. What we know is he became the advisor and lover of Indoril Nerevar, the Hortator who united the Kimmer and led them in the war against the Dwemer. At the Battle of Red Mountain, when the Dwemer vanished, Nerevar was mortally wounded. Before he died, he made his closest companions promise never to use the tools on the heart. Those companions were Vivec, Almalexia, Sotasil, and Vorin Dagoth. They all swore they wouldn't do it. Then Nerevar died. Except the Tribunal did use the tools. They went to the heart and performed the ritual Kagrenac had attempted. It worked. They became gods, gaining immortality, immense magical power, and divine awareness. Vorin Dagoth tried to stop them or join them. The accounts differ, and something went wrong. He became Dagoth Ur, a corrupted god thing powered by the heart, and the Tribunal had to seal him under Red Mountain. For thousands of years, the Tribunal ruled Morrowind as living gods. They protected their people from threats, blessed them with magic, built grand temples, and maintained order. Vivec specifically founded Vivec City on the southern coast of Vardenfell. The city became one of the largest in Morrowind, divided into cantons floating in the water with his palace at the center. Here's where things get interesting. During one of his journeys, Vivec achieved Kim. Kim is a state of enlightenment where you realize the entire universe is a dream, specifically the dream of the Godhead, and that you don't actually exist as a separate entity. You're just a character in someone's dream. For most people, realizing this would cause zero-summing, where you realize you don't exist and therefore stop existing. You pop like a bubble, gone. But if you have strong enough will, strong enough ego, strong enough sense of self, you can realize you don't exist and maintain your individuality anyway. That's Kim. It's like lucid dreaming but for reality itself. You're aware you're in a dream, but you're still there, and because you know it's a dream, you can change things. You can rewrite the dream from within. Vivec describes this in his sermons. He says he achieved Kim by understanding he was both everything and nothing. He was part of the Godhead's dream, but also separate. He was the ruling king who oversees all, but also the one who is forgotten. The union of opposites, the walking contradiction. With Kim, Vivec could reshape reality through will alone. When he wrote the 36 Lessons of Vivec, which are part autobiography, part religious text, part metaphysical instruction manual, he embedded truths about the nature of reality. Some scholars think he literally rewrote his own past using Kim, which is why there are multiple contradictory accounts of his birth and early life. All of them are true because he made them true retroactively. The most famous example of Vivek's power is the Ministry of Truth. During the early First Era, the Daedric prince Sheogorath threw a moon at Vivek city. This wasn't a metaphor. An actual celestial body called Bardao was falling from the sky, aimed directly at the city. Vivek flew up to meet it, looked at it, and just stopped it in midair with his divine power. But he didn't move it away or destroy it. He froze it above the city as a reminder. He called it his Ministry of Truth and turned it into a prison for heretics and criminals. For thousands of years, the moon hung there, motionless, a testament to Vivek's power. The people of Vivek city lived their entire lives with a moon floating overhead, held in place by their god's will. Vivek also fought Meirunes Dagon multiple times. During one invasion, Meirunes Dagon attacked Mournhold, another major Dunmer city. Vivek and Sota Sil worked together to banish him. They succeeded, though Mournhold was destroyed in the process. Later, Vivek battled Dagon solo and won again. A mortal turned god defeating a Daedric prince multiple times is an insane feat. The 36 lessons contain lessons about reaching Kim. Vivek teaches that you have to love yourself and the world simultaneously. You have to understand that you're dreaming but still value the dream. You have to be willing to unmake yourself and remake yourself better. He calls it the Sijic endeavor, the path to enlightenment that leads beyond godhood to something greater. But here's where things went wrong for Vivek. The tribunal's power was tied to the heart of Lorkhan. They had to make pilgrimages to Red Mountain regularly to renew their connection. Without those renewal rituals, their power would fade. When Dagoth-Ur woke up and started corrupting the heart, he cut off the tribunal's access. They started weakening. Their miracles became less frequent. Their blessings faded. By the time Morrowind happens, the Third Era, Vivek is a shadow of his former self. He's still incredibly powerful, still functionally immortal, but he's not the reality-warping god he used to be. The Nerevarin, the reincarnation of Indoril Nerevar, shows up and Vivek knows what's coming. The Nerevarin has to destroy the heart of Lorkhan to stop Dagoth-Ur permanently. That means the tribunal loses their divinity completely. Vivek cooperates. He gives the Nerevarine Wraithguard one of the tools of Kagranak and tells them what they need to do. Some players kill Vivek anyway because he betrayed Nerevar. Others leave him alive. Either way, when the heart is destroyed, Vivek loses his god powers. Without Vivek's power holding it, the Ministry of Truth, the frozen moon above Vivek city, starts to fall. Slowly at first, then faster. Vivek himself disappears during the Oblivion Crisis. Nobody knows what happened to him. Did he die? Did he ascend to something greater? Did he achieve Amaranth and dream his own universe? The Dunmer don't know. In the year 4E5, the Red Year, Bardao finally struck Vivek city. The impact was catastrophic. The moon hit with enough force to trigger the eruption of Red Mountain. Lava flooded across Vardenfell. Ash clouds covered the sky. Most of Morrowind became uninhabitable. Millions died. The Dunmer called it the worst disaster in their history, and it happened because Vivek wasn't there to hold the moon anymore. Here's the thing about Vivek that makes him special. He achieved Kim, true reality manipulation, but he also lost it or chose to let it go. True Kim should be permanent. Once you understand you're in a dream and maintain your identity, you should always have that power. The fact that Vivek lost his abilities when the heart was destroyed suggests maybe he didn't fully achieve Kim, or he did, but still relied on the heart for most of his divine power. Some scholars think Vivek achieved Kim, but only briefly, or partially. He reached the state, but couldn't maintain it. Others think he fully achieved it but chose to limit himself for reasons mortals can't understand. Maybe maintaining Kim requires constant effort, constant remembering, and he eventually forgot. Maybe he zero-summed after all, just slowly, fading from existence over centuries. The 36 lessons remain as his legacy. Other beings, potentially, could learn Kim from reading them if they're smart enough and strong enough to understand. Vivek wanted to teach others the path to enlightenment. Whether anyone successfully followed that path is unknown. Vivek's power at his peak was incredible. He stopped the moon, killed a Daedric prince, rewrote his own history, and taught others about the nature of reality. That earns him a high spot on this list. But his reliance on an external power source and his eventual loss of that power keeps him from the very top. Next, let's talk about the last Dragonborn, the protagonist of Skyrim. This is the first true mortal on our list, but calling them just a mortal doesn't really cover what they are. The last Dragonborn has the soul of a dragon trapped in a mortal body, which means they can permanently kill dragons by absorbing their souls. They're a walking paradox, mortal flesh with immortal essence. The Dragonborn legend goes back to the beginning of the Septim dynasty. Tiber Septim was Dragonborn, which is how he could light the dragon fires and wear the Amulet of Kings. The Dragonborn emperors maintained the barrier between Mundus and Oblivion for centuries. When Martin Septim died ending the Oblivion Crisis, the Dragonborn bloodline supposedly ended with him. But 200 years later, in Skyrim, another Dragonborn appears. The game starts with you on a cart being taken to your execution in Helgen. Alduin attacks, burning the town, and in the chaos, you escape. You're just some prisoner at first, then you kill a dragon at the Western Watchtower, absorb its soul, and realize what you are. The guards watch you unconsciously shout, and they know you're Dragonborn. Being Dragonborn means you can learn the Tomb, the ancient voice, at an accelerated rate. Normal people have to train for years or decades to learn a single shout. The Greybeards spend their entire lives mastering the voice, but the Dragonborn learns shouts almost instantly by absorbing dragon souls. Each dragon they kill makes them stronger. The Thu'um is reality manipulation through language. When you shout Fusroda, you're not making wind. You're speaking force balance push in the language of dragons, and reality has to obey. It's not magic in the conventional sense. It's more like programming reality by speaking in its native tongue. Over the course of Skyrim, the last Dragonborn becomes absurdly powerful. They learn unrelenting force, which can shout people off cliffs or knock dragons out of the sky. Fire breath and frost breath for elemental damage. Dragon rend, which forces dragons to land and feel mortality. Slow time, which literally manipulates the flow of time around them. Become ethereal, which makes them intangible and immune to damage. Stormcall summons a literal thunderstorm. Whirlwind sprint lets them move faster than the eye can follow. Bend will can dominate the minds of dragons and people. Then there's Marked for Death, which drains the target's armor and health, making them vulnerable. Iceform freezes enemies solid. Disarm rips weapons out of people's hands. Elemental Fury speeds up attack speed. Call of Valor summons ancient Nord heroes from Sovngarde to fight alongside you. The list goes on. By the end of Skyrim's main quest, the Dragonborn has killed Alduin, the World Eater, in Sovngarde. This is supposed to be impossible. Alduin is the firstborn of Akatosh, created to end the Kalpa, and the ancient Nords couldn't kill him even with an Elder Scroll. But the Dragonborn does it with help from 3 legendary heroes and the Dragonrend Shout. In the Dawnguard DLC, the Dragonborn can become a vampire lord, gaining the ability to transform into a winged monster with necromancy powers, drain life from victims, summon gargoyles, and turn into mist. Or they can reject vampirism and join the Dawnguard as a vampire hunter, wielding crossbows and sun magic. In the Dragonborn DLC, they travel to Solstheim and confront Miraak, the first Dragonborn. Miraak served Hermias Mora for thousands of years, gathering knowledge and power in Apocrypha. He'd learned shouts that don't even exist in Skyrim's time. He could control dragons completely, bending them to his will without the bend will shout. He'd absorbed the souls of countless dragons over millennia. The fight with Miraak happens in Apocrypha, in Hermaios Mora's realm, where the laws of reality are already questionable. You fight on platforms floating in a void, with tentacles writhing everywhere and seekers attacking from all sides. Miraak is the hardest fight in Skyrim because he's everything you are, but with thousands more years of experience. When you finally beat him, Hermaios Mora kills him himself and lets you absorb all of Miraak's power. Beyond the main questlines, the last Dragonborn can join every major faction in Skyrim. They become the harbinger of the Companions, leading a group of warriors that includes werewolves. They become the Archmage of the College of Winterhold, mastering all schools of magic. They become the Listener of the Dark Brotherhood, commanding an organization of assassins blessed by Sithis. They become the Guildmaster of the Thieves Guild, controlling the underworld of Riften. They can join the Stormcloaks or the Imperial Legion and decide the outcome of the Civil War. They can become a Thane in every hold, gaining property and influence across Skyrim. If they choose, they can collect Daedric artifacts from all the Daedric princes: the Mace of Molag Bal, Mehrunes' Razor, the Wabajak, Azura's Star, the Ebony Blade, Volendrung, the Ogma Infinium, which permanently increases skills, the Skeleton Key, which opens any lock, the Mask of Clavicus, while Dawnbreaker, which burns undead, the Ring of Namira, Spellbreaker, which creates a ward against magic, the Sanguine Rose, which summons a Dremora, and Savior's Hide Armor. They can craft equipment that makes them nearly invincible. With max smithing, enchanting, and alchemy, you can create armor with thousands of defense and weapons that kill most enemies in one hit. The gameplay breaks entirely if you optimize it. The Dragonborn at max level is soloing giants, trolls, and dragon priests without breaking a sweat. But here's the thing that keeps the last Dragonborn from being higher on this list. They're still mortal. They can be killed. They don't have Kim. They haven't achieved Amaranth. They haven't transcended the dream. They're incredibly powerful, the strongest mortal in the Fourth Era by a massive margin, but they're still bound by the rules of Mundus. Dragons are immortal unless their souls are absorbed by a Dragonborn, so the last Dragonborn should technically live forever since no other Dragonborn exists to permanently kill them. But that's speculation. We don't know if they age. We don't know what happens to them after Skyrim. There's a theory they might eventually mantle Talos, becoming a new god, but that's fan speculation with no concrete evidence. What we know is the last Dragonborn killed the World Eater, dominated the first Dragonborn, became the champion of multiple Daedric princes, mastered the Tuum beyond what anyone except maybe the Greybeards achieved, and reshaped Skyrim's political landscape. They're the most powerful mortal in modern Elder Scrolls history, but they haven't reached the level of gods or cosmic forces. That's why they're in this position on the list. Let's talk about Lorkhan, because this is where we start getting into the beings that created reality itself. Lorkhan goes by many names depending on which culture you ask. The Nords call him Shor, the Imperials call him Shezar, the Khajiit call him Lorkhaj, the Red Guards call him September, the Altmer call him the Doomdrum or the Missing God, and they hate him for what he did. Lorkhan is one of the original Et'ada, the first spirits that came into being after Anu and Padome created the Orbis. The Etiada were basically proto-gods, beings of pure concept and power that existed in the void of potential. They weren't bound by time or space because those things didn't exist yet. They just were floating in the gray center between Anuel's order and Sithis' chaos. Lorkhan is unique among the Et'ada because he's associated with Sithis, the soul of Padome. Some Khajiit texts say Lorkhaj was born in the Great Darkness with a piece of the Dark Heart in him. Others say Sithis created Lorkhan specifically to introduce death and limitation into the world. The exact relationship is unclear, but Lorkhan is the child or avatar or first creation of Sithis. Here's what Lorkhan did. He went to the other Et'ada with an idea. He proposed creating a place where spirits could experience limitation, mortality, and change. A place where they couldn't be all-powerful, where they'd have to struggle, suffer, and eventually die. He called this place Mundus, the mortal plane, and he convinced or tricked the other Itiada into helping him build it. How much of this was deception depends on who's telling the story. The Altmer claim Lorkhan lied about what would happen, promising paradise and delivering a prison. They say he tricked the Eredar into giving up their power and becoming trapped in mortality. The Nords say Shor showed the spirits a path to enlightenment that required sacrifice. The truth is probably somewhere in between. Magnus, the Edda who designed Mundus, led the project. He's the architect, the one who drew up the blueprints. Magnus figured out how to turn ethereal concepts into physical reality, how to create matter and time and space. Other Edada contributed their essence to the project. Akatosh gave himself to become time. The Earthbones gave themselves to become the laws of nature. Y'ffre became the story of existence, locking the chaos of creation into fixed forms. But here's the catch. Creating Mundus drained the Edda of their power. The more they gave to the project, the weaker they became. Magnus realized this was happening and fled to Aetherius, tearing a hole in reality that became the sun. Other spirits followed him through smaller holes that became stars. These are called the Magnage, the spirits who abandoned the project before it cost them everything. The spirits who stayed became the Aedra, the 8 divines. They gave so much of themselves to Mundus that they're barely conscious anymore. They're ghosts of what they used to be, powerful still, but dormant, dreaming, barely able to influence the world they created. That's why the Aedra need worshippers and priests to act on their behalf. They don't have enough power left to do things directly. Lorkhan gave everything. His physical body became the moons, Maser and Secunda. His heart was torn out and shot across Tamriel with an arrow, landing in what would become Red Mountain. His divine spark was scattered across creation, but unlike the other Aedra, Lorkhan didn't survive the process. He was killed, torn apart, destroyed by the other Aedra who felt betrayed. There was a convention at the Adamantine Tower, the first structure ever built, where the Edada held a trial. Auriel, the elven aspect of Akatosh, presided. They judged Lorkhan guilty of tricking them, of causing the death of countless spirits, of creating a prison. Trinimek, the warrior god, fought for Lorkhan's punishment. Auriel tore out Lorkhan's heart with an arrow and shot it across the continent. The heart kept beating, even separated from the body, powered by divine will. Lorkhan's body fell apart. His remains became the moons. Some texts say his corpse still orbits Nirn, forever a reminder of the price of creation. His divine essence scattered into pieces that occasionally resurface in mortals called Chezarines, avatars or fragments of Lorkhan's power walking the world in mortal form. Pelinal Whitestreak was almost certainly a Chezarine. He appeared during the First Era to help humanity fight the Aelids, the elven slavers who ruled Cyrodiil. Pelinal was described as a cyborg time-traveling killing machine sent by Shor himself. He had fits of madness where he'd slaughter friend and foe alike. He once mistook a group of Khajiit for Aelids and killed them all. When he was finally killed, the Aelids tore him apart, and Morihaus, his companion, found his head still talking, giving prophecies about events thousands of years in the future. Tiber Septim might have been a Chezarine. Wulfarth, Ash King, who later merged with Tiber to become Talos, was definitely one. Wulfarth was an ancient Nord king who died and was resurrected multiple times by the gods to serve their purposes. Each time he came back, he served Shor's agenda, uniting the Nords or fighting their enemies. The pattern of resurrection and service to humanity's freedom suggests divine intervention, specifically from the missing god. Here's the deeper meaning of what Lorkhan did. Mundus is necessary for the Psijic endeavor, the path to Kim and Amarant. You can't achieve enlightenment without mortality. The Edda were static, unchanging, trapped in their own perfection. They couldn't grow or learn or become something more because they had no limitations. Lorcan created those limitations deliberately. By making mortality, Lorcan created the possibility for transcendence. In Mundus, beings can suffer, struggle, learn, and eventually understand the nature of reality well enough to achieve Kim. They can realize they're in a dream and maintain their identity anyway. They can go further and achieve Amaranth, creating their own dreams, becoming new godheads. None of that would be possible without Lorcan's sacrifice. The Altmer hate Lorcan because they see Mundus as a downgrade. They were immortal spirits once, and now they're trapped in weak mortal bodies. They want to unmake creation and return to their original state. That's why the Talmor ban Talos worship. Talos is a human who achieved divinity, proving Lorcan's plan works. If humans can become gods through the path Lorcan laid out, then the Altmer's entire philosophy is wrong. The Nords love Shor because he gave them the chance to be heroes. Sovngarde, the Nordic afterlife, is literally Shor's hall where warriors feast and fight forever. Shor values bravery, freedom, and the struggle against tyranny. He's the god of humanity in its most rebellious form. Lorcan is dead, or his body is. His heart was destroyed by the Nerevarine in Morrowind, severing the tribunal's connection to divinity and killing Dagoth permanently. But Lorcan's influence persists. His plan worked. Mortals can achieve enlightenment. The Psijic endeavor continues. Every being that reaches Kim or Amaranth proves Lorcan's sacrifice was worth it. Lorcan created the possibility for transcendence at the cost of his own existence. That's why he's this high on the list. He's not physically powerful anymore because he's dead. But his impact on reality, his creation of the path to godhood, his sacrifice that made everything else possible, that earns him this position. Without Lorcan, there would be no Mundus. Without Mundus, there would be no chance for mortals to escape the dream. He's the reason any of this matters. Now we're talking about Akatosh, also called Auriel by the elves, Alkosh by the Khajiit, Bormahu by the dragons, and the dragon god of time by the Imperials. He's the chief deity of the 8 divines and, according to most creation myths, the first of the Et Ada to come into being. That makes him the oldest god in the conventional sense, the one who defined what it means to be a god. Before Akatosh, there was no time. Think about what that means. There was no sequence of events, no cause and effect, no before or after. Everything that could exist existed all at once in a timeless void. The Etiada were concepts floating in chaos, unable to distinguish themselves from each other or from the background noise of possibility. Anu wanted to know himself, which created Anuel, which created Akatosh as the soul of Anuel. Or Anuel created Akatosh directly. Or Akatosh always existed and created himself retroactively. Time travel and creation myths get messy. Akatosh's existence created the possibility for linear time. With time came sequence, order, progression. The other Etiada could suddenly have names, identities, distinct existence. They could think, I was this, I am this, I will be this. That separation from the timeless chaos is what allowed individual spirits to form. Akatosh didn't just create time, he created the ability for anything to exist distinctly. When Lorcan proposed creating Mundus, Akatosh was one of the major contributors. He gave himself to become time within the mortal plane, establishing the flow of past, present, and future that mortals experience. This drained him of most of his power. The Akatosh that exists now is a shadow of what he was before creation. He's like a battery that's been almost completely depleted, keeping reality running. Akatosh created the dragons. They're pieces of him, shards of his divine essence given form and will. Alduin, the World Eater, is his firstborn and most powerful creation. Paarthurnax, who taught mortals the Thu'um, is another direct creation. All dragons are fragments of Akatosh, which is why they're immortal unless a dragonborn permanently destroys their souls. They're not just powerful creatures, they're pieces of a god walking the earth. The dragon language, the Tuum, is literally speaking in the language of time itself. When you shout in the dragon tongue, you're using Akatosh's native language, the words that define reality. That's why it has power. You're not casting a spell, you're speaking a fundamental truth that reality has to obey because it's written in the code of existence. During the First Era, Alessia, the slave queen who freed humanity from the Aelids, made a covenant with Akatosh. She'd been praying to all the gods for help, and Akatosh answered. He gave her the Amulet of Kings and created the Dragonborn bloodline. In exchange, her descendants would maintain the dragon fires in the Temple of the One in the Imperial City. As long as the fires burned and a Dragonborn emperor wore the amulet, the barriers between Mundus and Oblivion would remain strong. Daedric princes couldn't invade or manifest properly. This covenant protected Tamriel for thousands of years. The dragon fires were lit at the coronation of every emperor. If the throne was empty for too long, the barriers would weaken. That's what happened during the Oblivion Crisis. When Uriel Septim died without a legitimate heir, the fires went out. Mehrunes Dagon saw his chance and started the invasion. For the first time in millennia, Oblivion gates opened across Tamriel because Akatosh's protection had lapsed. Martin Septim, the bastard son who never knew he was Dragonborn until it was too late, sacrificed himself to fix this permanently. He shattered the Amulet of Kings in the Temple of the One and became an avatar of Akatosh, a physical manifestation of the Time Dragon. The avatar was enormous, a dragon made of divine fire and light, so bright it hurt to look at. It fought Mehrunes Dagon hand to hand in the streets of the Imperial City. The battle was apocalyptic, two gods fighting with the full weight of their power. Buildings crumbled, the ground shook, fire and blood magic filled the air. Mehrunes Dagon was fully manifested, at the height of his strength, having bypassed all the barriers that usually keep Daedric princes out, and Akatosh's avatar still beat him. The Time Dragon drove Dagon back to Oblivion, sealed the barriers permanently without needing the dragon fires anymore, then turned to stone as a monument. The statue still stands in the Imperial City during Skyrim, a frozen dragon rearing back in triumph. That statue is the physical remnant of Akatosh's manifestation, a permanent seal that keeps the barriers strong. No Daedric prince has been able to invade Tamriel properly since. Mehrunes Dagon can barely summon a couple Dremora near his shrine. Molag Bal hasn't tried anything after the Planameld. The other princes have stayed in their lanes. But here's the cost. Akatosh can't manifest again. That avatar was probably everything he had left. He's still there, still maintaining time, still preventing reality from collapsing, but he's not conscious in any meaningful way. He's more like a program running in the background, keeping the system stable. The Aedras sacrificed their awareness and freedom to create Mundus. They're ghosts now, echoes, powerful but passive. The Dragonborn bloodline is Akatosh's tool for acting in the world. Dragonborn emperors maintained his covenant. Dragonborn heroes, like the last Dragonborn, fight threats that endanger reality itself. They're his agents, mortals with a fragment of his divine soul, able to do what he can't do directly anymore. There are also complications with Akatosh's nature. Different cultures see him differently. The elves worship Auriel, who they claim is the original version, the one who punished Lorkhan and led the creation project. The Imperials worship Akatosh, who made the covenant with Alessia and protects humanity. The Khajiit worship Alkosh, who's part of their unique pantheon and sometimes combined with Khenarthi. The Nords don't worship Akatosh at all. They worship Kain and Shor and barely acknowledge the Imperial divines. Some scholars think Akatosh and Auriel are the same being seen through different cultural lenses. Others think they're separate entities that got merged during a dragon break. During the Middle Dawn, a 1,000-year-long dragon break caused by the Marukati Selective trying to remove elven aspects from Akatosh, time shattered. When it came back together, maybe Akatosh and Auriel had been separate before, but were the same being after. Or maybe they were always the same. Dragon breaks make causality weird. What we know for sure is Akatosh is time itself. Every moment that passes, every sequence of events, every causal chain, all of it flows from him. Dragon breaks happen when his grip on the timeline weakens, or breaks. The warp in the west with Numidium, the middle dawn with the Marukati, the red moment at the Battle of Red Mountain, these are all instances where time shattered because Akatosh lost control. Akatosh is the most active Aedra. He's the one who responds to prayers most often, the one who intervenes in world events, the one who gifts power to mortals. The other Aedra are barely there. Kynareth shows up occasionally. Talos is active, but he's technically not an original Aedra. The rest are silent, passive, barely remembered. Akatosh is the exception. But even with all that, Akatosh is weakened. He gave most of himself to create Mundus. He's bound by the rules of the world he helped make. He can't just rewrite reality or reshape existence. He maintains time, but he doesn't control it absolutely. Dragon breaks prove that. If he was all-powerful, time would never break, no matter what mortals did. That's why Akatosh isn't at the top of this list. He's incredibly important, vital to the existence of Mundus, the source of dragons and Dragonborn, and the tomb. But he's not the most powerful being. He gave up that power to create something meaningful. His sacrifice, like Lorkhan's, was necessary for reality to exist the way it does. But it cost him the top spot. Let's talk about Talos now. And this gets complicated, because Talos is three people in one. The common story that everyone knows is that Talos is Tiber Septim, the guy who conquered Tamriel and founded the Third Empire. But the deeper lore suggests Talos is actually the merged consciousness of three people who achieved something called enantiomorphic unity, becoming something greater than the sum of their parts. Those three are Tiber Septim, the Emperor himself, Wulfharth Ash King, an ancient Nordic hero, and Shezarene who'd been resurrected multiple times by the gods, and Zurin Arctus, the Imperial battle mage who helped Tiber conquer Tamriel but was later betrayed. These three merged through a complex series of deaths, betrayals, and soul manipulations involving the Mantella and Numidium. Tiber Septim, whose birth name was Hjalti Earlybeard, was a Breton born in High Rock. He learned to use the Tu'um at a young age, possibly taught by Wulfharth or by another tongue. He rose through the ranks of the Colovian military, conquering territories and gaining power. He took the name Talos, which means storm crown in the old tongue, after witnessing a vision of a serpent in his dreams. He later took the name Tiber Septim when he became emperor. Wulfharth Ash King was a Nordic king from the First Era. He died and been resurrected multiple times. The first time, he was burned by the other Nordic kings who feared his power. The second time, the Underking brought him back as an ash zombie. He kept coming back because sure, the Nordic aspect of Lorkhan needed him to serve humanity's cause. Wulfharth was a Shezarene, a mortal avatar of the dead god. Zurin Arctus was the Imperial battle mage and Tiber's right hand. He helped Tiber conquer Tamriel with the Numidium, but Tiber betrayed him. Zurin's soul was trapped in the Mantella, the soul gem powering Numidium, and his body was destroyed. His essence became the Underking, a wraith seeking the Mantella to finally die properly. The three of them had a complex relationship involving betrayal, resurrection, and merging. Tiber and Wulfharth worked together at first, but there was conflict. Zurin tried to stop Tiber from using Numidium improperly and got killed for it. The exact sequence of events is muddled by contradictory accounts and dragon breaks, but the result is clear. The three souls merged into a single oversoul that became the god Talos. Talos achieved Kim. He realized the entire universe is a dream, that he's a character in the Godhead's imagination, and he maintained his sense of self anyway. That's the first step. Then he went further, through the merging of three souls in an enantiomorphic unity, through the understanding gained from Kim, through his connection to Lorkhan as a Shezarene, Talos became a god for real. When Tiber Septim died, or when the three parts of him fully merged after death, he ascended to become the ninth divine. People started worshipping him, temples were built, priests channeled his blessings. And unlike the 8 divines who sacrificed their power to create Mundus, Talos became a god after creation. That means he has more available power than Akatosh or Kinnereth or any of the original Aedra. There are accounts of Talos using Kim to retroactively change reality. The most famous example is the jungles of Cyrodiil. According to texts from the Second Era and earlier, Cyrodiil was a tropical jungle. The heartlands were dense rainforest. The climate was hot and humid. Then Talos used Kim to change that. He didn't terraform the land gradually, he changed what the land had always been. He rewrote the past, so Cyrodiil had always been temperate forests and grasslands. Nobody, except scholars reading old books, even remembers there were jungles. That's the power of Kim. You can edit the dream from within. You can change history, present, and future simultaneously, because you understand none of it is real in the first place. It's all just the Godhead's dream, and if you know you're in a dream, you can change the dream. The Thalmor, the elven supremacists who control the Aldmeri Dominion during Skyrim, are trying to erase Talos. The White Gold Concordat, the treaty that ended the Great War, bans Talos worship across the Empire. The Thalmor enforce this violently, arresting and torturing anyone caught worshipping Talos. They have justiciars hunting down Talos worshippers in Skyrim. This isn't just religious persecution, it's metaphysical warfare. The Thalmor believe that if people stop believing in Talos, he'll lose his divinity and fade. Gods in Elder Scrolls are powered by belief, to some degree. The Tribunal maintained godhood partly through the worship of the Dunmer. When the Dunmer lost faith after the Red Year, the Tribunal's influence faded completely. The Thalmor think they can do the same thing to Talos. But there is a deeper reason. Talos is a human who achieved divinity through Lorkhan's path, through mortality and the Pidgic endeavor. That proves the Altmer philosophy is wrong. The Altmer want to unmake Mundus, to return to their original state as immortal spirits. They think creation was a mistake, a prison that trapped them in mortal forms. If Talos exists, if a mortal became a god through the path Lorkhan laid out, then creation wasn't a mistake, it was the whole point. Erasing Talos weakens the barriers that keep reality stable. If the ninth divine is removed, if the pillar he represents crumbles, it might destabilize Mundus enough that the Altmer can accomplish their goal. It's apocalyptic thinking, but the Thalmor are committed to it. The evidence that Talos is still a god despite the ban is mixed. Heimskr, the priest in Whiterun, preaches about Talos openly and doesn't get arrested until the Thalmor take over. Talos shrines still grant blessings in Skyrim if you pray at them, which suggests he's still active and responsive. The ghost of Wulfart appears in Sovngarde during Skyrim's main quest, which suggests the components of Talos still exist in some form even after merging. Some people think Talos is maintaining the barriers that Akatosh sealed after the Oblivion Crisis. Maybe Martin's sacrifice created the permanent seal, but Talos is the one keeping it strong. If he fades, Oblivion gates could start opening again. That would make the Thalmor's plan even more insane, because they'd be inviting Daedric invasion just to prove a philosophical point. Talos is more powerful than the weakened Aedra, because he achieved godhood after they sacrificed most of their strength. He has the might of 3 legendary heroes combined. He has Kim, the ability to reshape reality through will. He's worshipped across Tamriel despite the ban, giving him a constant source of power. He's connected to Lorkhan, making him part of the cosmic plan for transcendence. But here's why Talos isn't higher. He's still operating within the dream. He achieved Kim, yes, but he didn't achieve Amaranth. He hasn't created his own universe. He's incredibly powerful within the context of the Orbis, but he's still part of the Orbis. He's still a character in the Godhead's dream, just one who knows he's dreaming. That keeps him from the very top of the list. Now we're getting into the really heavy cosmological stuff. Let's talk about Sithis. Sithis is not a Daedric prince. Sithis is not a god in the way mortals understand gods. Sithis is the soul of Padomai, one of the two primordial forces that predate everything else. If you're familiar with the Inuad, the creation myth, Padomai represents chaos, change, movement, and the void. In the beginning, if you can call it that, since time didn't exist yet, there was Anu and Padomai. Anu was stasis, order, light, and persistence. Padomai was chaos, change, darkness, and destruction. They weren't really brothers, they weren't really anything, they just were, two opposing concepts existing in the void before existence had rules. Their interplay created Nier, who represents possibility, the gray center between stasis and chaos. Both Anu and Padomai loved Nier, but Nier chose Anu. This created conflict. Nier became pregnant with creation, 12 worlds born from the union of possibility and stasis. Padme went insane with jealousy and attacked Nier, killing her and shattering the 12 worlds into countless pieces. Anu fought Padme in grief and rage. The battle was apocalyptic, taking place outside of time and space. Anu eventually won, wounding Padme so severely that he'd never fully recover. Anu took the pieces of the 12 worlds and reformed them into one, which became Nirn. But Padme attacked one final time, mortally wounding Anu in the process. Anu realized he couldn't kill Padomai without destroying everything, so he dragged both of them outside of time forever. Their blood spilled during the final battle became the foundation of reality. Anu's blood became the stars, points of light and order in the darkness. Padomai's blood became the Daedra, spirits of chaos and change. The mixed blood of both became the Aedra, spirits with aspects of order and chaos, light and dark. Sithis is the soul of Padomai. The way the Dark Brotherhood understands it, Padomai created Sithis, or Sithis is what Padomai became after being wounded. Sithis is described as the void, the nothing between something, the force of entropy and change that inevitably breaks down all order. When you die, according to the Dark Brotherhood, your soul returns to Sithis, the great void where everything came from and everything will return to. The Dark Brotherhood worships Sithis as the Dread Father. They believe Sithis is real, conscious, and that he commands them through the Night Mother, a spectral figure who speaks his will. When they perform the Black Sacrament, a ritual to summon the Dark Brotherhood, they're praying to Sithis directly. When they kill their targets, they're sending those souls to Sithis as offerings. But here's where things get weird. Is Sithis actually conscious? Does he care about the Dark Brotherhood? Or is Sithis just a force, like gravity or entropy, that the Dark Brotherhood anthropomorphizes into a god? The lore is deliberately vague on this. Sithis is described as being beyond language. The concept of Sithis is so distant from mortal understanding that naming it automatically misses the point. Sithis was created when Anu wanted to know himself, so he created Sithis as the sum of all limitations, the opposite of himself. That means Sithis is literally defined as not Anu, the antistasis, the force that breaks down order. The interplay between Anuiel, who's the soul of Anu, and Sithis created the Orbis, that's everything, all of existence. Mundus, oblivion, Aetherius, the void. Everything that is was born from the conflict and cooperation between these two primordial forces. Anuiel created Akatosh to be his soul. Sithis created or gave birth to Lorkhan. So you have Anu birthing Anuiel, birthing Akatosh on one side, and Padomai birthing Sithis, birthing Lorkhan on the other. Lorkhan is thought to be the child or first creation of Sithis. The Khajiit myth says Lorkhaj was born in the great darkness with darkness in his heart. That darkness is Sithis, the void, the chaos that drives change. Lorkhan's plan to create Mundus was driven by that chaos, the need to break the static existence of the Edada and force change through mortality. If Lorkhan is Sithis' avatar or child, then Sithis is indirectly responsible for all of creation. Mundus exists because Sithis created or inspired Lorcan to do what he did. The Psijic endeavor, the path to Kim and Amaranth, exists because of Cetus. Change, growth, mortality, suffering, all the things that make transcendence possible, all of that comes from the primordial chaos that Sithis represents. But the problem with ranking Sithis is we never see Sithis do anything directly. Sithis doesn't manifest, Sithis doesn't speak clearly, Sithis doesn't have goals or plans that we can understand. The Dark Brotherhood might be completely wrong about everything. Sithis might not even be aware of them. The Night Mother might be lying or crazy or actually channeling something else entirely. Sithis is a force, a concept, maybe not even conscious. The power is there, absolutely. Half of all reality comes from Sithis, but it's passive. Sithis doesn't have agency or will in the way gods or Daedric princes do. Sithis just is, the eternal void, the force of change that breaks down everything eventually. That's why Sithis is in this position on the list. The power level is immense, but the lack of consciousness, the lack of direct action, the uncertainty about whether Sithis even exists as a thinking being, all of that holds Sithis back from the very top. Sithis is half the foundation of reality, but it's a passive foundation, not an active force reshaping things on a whim. Next, we're talking about Anu, the counterpart to Padomai and the source of Sithis' opposite, Anuiel. Anu is the primordial force of stasis, order, light, and persistence. In the creation myth, Anu and Padomai are the first two things that exist, if exist is even the right word. They are concepts more than beings, forces rather than people. In the Anuad, Anu and Nir fall in love. Nir becomes pregnant with creation, the 12 worlds. Padomai attacks Nir out of jealousy, killing her and shattering the worlds. Anu fights Padomai, defeats him, and reforms the shattered worlds into Nirn. Padomai attacks one more time, mortally wounding Anu. Anu drags both of them outside of time forever to save creation from being destroyed in their endless battle. The blood they spilled during their final battle became the gods. Anu's blood became the stars, points of light scattered across the void. Padomai's blood became the Daedra, spirits of chaos who refused to participate in creation. The mixed blood of both became the Aedra, spirits with aspects of order and chaos who gave themselves to create Mundus. This myth establishes that all the gods, all the Daedric princes, all the Aedra, everything that follows came from these two primordial beings. Meirunes, Dagon, Molag-Bal, Hermaeus Mora, all of them are fragments of Padomai's blood. Akatosh, Kinareth, Mara, all of them are fragments of mixed blood. Everything traces back to Anu and Padomai. Anu created Anuel, the soul of Anu, who represents the ordering force that allows things to have identity. Anuel created Akatosh, time, who allows things to have sequence and progression. This creates a hierarchy. Anu is at the top, Anuel is his soul, Akatosh is the soul of Anuel. Each step down is a fragment, a specific expression of the concept above it. But here's where it gets complicated. Anu, the primordial force, is different from Anu, the Amaranth. Some sources say Anu entered the sun and slept after dragging Padomai outside of time. While sleeping, Anu became the Godhead, the dreamer whose dream is the entire Elder Scrolls universe. Everything that exists in the Arbis, from the smallest mortal to the greatest Daedric prince, is part of Anu's dream. The Godhead is the current Amaranth, the being whose consciousness contains all of reality. The Arbis isn't a physical place that exists somewhere, it's a thought in the Godhead's mind. When the Godhead dreams, reality happens. When the Godhead stops dreaming, reality ends. Every being, every place, every event is just a detail in the dream. This is why Kim is possible. Kim is realizing you're in a dream. You look at yourself and understand you're not real, you're just a character in someone's dream, and that understanding should make you zero-sum, disappear completely. But if you have strong enough will, you can maintain your identity anyway. You know you're dreaming, and you're still there. Anu encompasses everything. Anu is described as Anu the Everything. The Clockwork Apostles, followers of Sota Sil, believe that all distinct entities and forces trace back to Anu. The separation between beings, the idea that you are you and I am me, that's an illusion created by Lorcan. In ultimate reality, there's no separation. Everything is Anu. You're Anu, I'm Anu. Meirunes Dagon is Anu, Alduin is Anu. All of it is one consciousness experiencing itself from countless perspectives. The entire point of the psychic endeavor, the path to Kim and Amaranth, is to escape this. You're part of Anu's dream, and the goal is to wake up. Not literally, because waking up would mean zero-summing and ceasing to exist, but to achieve Amaranth, to become a new godhead, to start your own dream that's separate from Anu's. If Anu is the current godhead, if the Orbis is Anu's dream, then Anu is the most powerful existing being by default. Everything happens within Anu's consciousness. All the Daedric princes, all the Aedra, all the mortals, all of it exists because Anu is dreaming. Stop the dream and everything ends. But there's one thing beyond even Anu, one state of being that surpasses the godhead. That's Amaranth itself, the process of becoming a new godhead and dreaming a new universe. That's the ultimate power in Elder Scrolls cosmology. Finally, we're talking about the Amaranth, also called the Godhead or the New Man. This isn't a specific individual, but a state of being, the ultimate goal of the Psijic endeavor. When someone achieves Amaranth, they become a new Godhead and dream their own universe into existence, completely separate from the current one. The process works like this. First, you have to achieve Kim. You realize the entire universe is a dream, that you're a character in the Godhead's imagination, that you don't actually exist as a separate entity. That realization should make you zero-sum, disappear into nothing, because if you don't exist, then you can't exist. But if your sense of self is strong enough, if your ego is powerful enough, you can maintain your identity even while knowing you're not real. That's Kim, the first step. Step 2 is going beyond Kim. Kim gives you power within the dream. You can reshape reality through will because you understand it's not real. But you're still inside the dream, still part of the Godhead's consciousness. Amaranth is stepping outside the dream entirely. To achieve Amaranth, you need to experience sensory deprivation on a cosmic scale. You need to merge so completely with another consciousness that you lose all sense of external input. You and another being become so unified that there's no distinction anymore. At that point, cut off from all external stimuli, unable to interact with the dream you came from, you start dreaming your own dream. Your dream becomes a new Arbis, completely separate from the old one. You're no longer part of the previous Godhead's consciousness. You're your own Godhead now, dreaming your own infinite possibilities into existence. Your dream has its own gods, its own mortals, its own rules. It might be similar to the dream you came from, or completely different. It's yours. The current Godhead is thought to be Anu from the Anuad. Anu achieved Amaranth after the conflict with Padme, which is why the Elder Scrolls universe exists at all. It's Anu's dream. Everything we see in the games, every book we read, every character we meet, all of it is happening inside Anu's sleeping mind. The entire point of Lorcan creating Mundus, the whole reason mortality and suffering exist, is so beings within the dream can achieve Amaranth and escape. The Psijic endeavor is the path to becoming a new Godhead. Without mortality, without limitation, without the possibility of change and growth, achieving Amaranth would be impossible. The Etiada were static, perfect, unchanging. They couldn't grow beyond what they were. Lorcan gave them mortality so they could learn, suffer, understand, and eventually transcend. Vivek teaches about Amaranth in the 36 lessons. He talks about the hurling disc, the wheel that turns and generates the next emanation. Each Amaranth creates new possibilities, new universes, new godheads who'll dream their own worlds. It's recursive, eternal, infinite creation. The goal isn't just to become a godhead, but to create a lineage of godheads, an endless chain of dreams, creating new dreams. Michael Kirkbride, who wrote a lot of the deep lore, has talked about this in out-of-game texts. He says, achieving Amaranth is the ultimate goal. It's about creating children of liberty without end, new dreamers who'll dream new universes, and the music lives forever. It's the answer to the question of why anything exists at all. Reality is an eternal process of creation, each godhead birthing new godheads in an infinite chain. The power of an Amaranth is beyond conventional measurement. You're not fighting, not competing with other beings. You're creating an entirely new existence that doesn't interact with the previous one at all. You're making a new wheel, a new Orbis, a new everything. Every being in Elder Scrolls, from Mehrunes, Dagon, to Akatosh, to Talos, they're all still within Anu's dream. An Amaranth steps outside and starts their own. That's why the Amaranth is at the top of this list. It's not about who can punch harder or who has better magic. It's about transcending the entire system, stepping outside the dream, and becoming a creator of new realities. Every other being on this list, no matter how powerful, is still part of the dream, their characters, even if they know their characters. The Amaranth is the author starting a new book. So let's summarize this whole thing and figure out the winner. At the bottom, we have Daedric princes, like Mehrunes, Dagon, and Molag Bal. They're powerful enough to threaten entire continents, but they can be stopped by mortals with the right tools and circumstances. They need specific conditions to manifest on Nirn, and even when they do, they're beatable. Dagon got kicked out by Martin Septim, Molag Bal got stopped by the Vestige in Meridia. Moving up, we have Hermaeus Mora, whose power is knowledge and manipulation. He knows everything, sees every possibility, but his power is indirect. He needs champions to act for him. Alduin, the World Eater, has the potential to be unstoppable if he fulfilled his purpose, but during Skyrim he's distracted and weakened, making him vulnerable to the Dragonborn. Then we get into the really powerful stuff. Jyggalag before his curse was so dangerous that every Daedric prince worked together to stop him. He could predict everything, command armies that never stopped, and was growing stronger constantly. Numidium, when active, breaks reality itself. It erases things from existence and causes dragon breaks just by walking around. Vivek achieved Kim and could reshape reality, but his power was tied to the heart of Lorkhan. When that connection was severed, he lost everything. The last Dragonborn killed the World Eater and dominated the first Dragonborn, making them the most powerful mortal in the Fourth Era. But they're still mortal. They haven't transcended the system. Higher up, we have Lorkhan, who created the possibility for transcendence by making mortality and mundus. He sacrificed himself so others could achieve enlightenment. Akatosh is time itself, the force that allows anything to have sequence and identity, but he's weakened from creating mundus. Talos achieved Kim and became a god after the Aedra were already weakened, making him more powerful than the 8 divines. Near the top, we have Cetus and Anu, the primordial forces whose interaction created everything. They're not really beings in the conventional sense, more like fundamental concepts. Half of all reality comes from each of them. Every god, every Daedric prince, every mortal, all of it traces back to their blood. And at the very top, we have the Amaranth, the state of becoming a new godhead and dreaming a new universe into existence. So, who wins? The answer is the Amaranth. Not because it's the strongest fighter or because it has the best combat feats, but because an Amaranth exists on a completely different level than everything else. Everything else on this list, no matter how powerful, exists within the dream. The Amaranth is the dreamer. Anu, as the current godhead, is the most powerful entity that currently exists in Elder Scrolls cosmology. Everything happens inside Anu's dream. All the Daedric princes, all the Aedra, all the heroes and villains and mortals, every single thing is part of Anu's consciousness experiencing itself. But the state of Amaranth itself, the possibility of becoming a new godhead, is the ultimate power in the universe. It's not about strength or magic or fighting. It's about stepping outside the entire system and creating your own. That's why Lorcan created Mundus. That's why the Psijic Endeavor exists. The whole point of everything, the reason mortality and suffering were introduced into the perfect existence of the Edda, is to create new Amaranths who'll dream new universes in an endless cycle of creation. The process never ends. Each godhead dreams beings who might achieve Amaranth and become new godheads themselves. Those new godheads dream their own universes with their own beings who might achieve Amaranth. It's infinite, recursive, eternal creation. Reality is an endless chain of dreamers creating new dreamers, and the music lives forever. So there you have it. The most powerful being in Elder Scrolls is the Amaranth, the one who dreams new realities into existence. Currently, that's Anu, the godhead whose dream contains everything we see in the games. But the state of Amaranth itself, the ability to transcend the dream and become a creator of new existence, that's the ultimate power. Everything else, no matter how godlike, is still dreaming inside someone else's dream. The Amaranth wakes up and starts dreaming their own. If this video helped you understand Elder Scrolls cosmology better, let me know what you think in the comments. This stuff gets wild the deeper you dig, and there's always more to discuss. Some people think the Nerevarine might have achieved Amaranth after leaving for Akavir. Others think Vivec is still out there somewhere, having finally transcended completely. The beauty of Elder Scrolls lore is there's always another layer to explore. Thanks for watching, and I'll catch you in the next one.